Like there's so many labor issues and issues about workers that don't get any attention, or at least enough attention, or good reporting. There's very few labor reporters out there, and it seems like media is every year is just contracting and getting smaller and smaller. And the media that does exist, it's being run by billionaires or propaganda arms that really aren't interested in talking to working people, or covering issues that are important to the working class. One of the best organizers is a bad boss in AI, and how it's implemented can oftentimes be a bad boss, especially in the tech industry, where employers are too excited to implement it and use it as fast as possible without thinking about their own workers and the consequences of that. Trump's friends are union busters, billionaire union busters. So they're not an administration that's pro-worker in any sense. The claims that they have just have been easily refuted, debunked, and have not panned out. This administration is very is an opponent to workers' rights, labor rights. They've been scaling back protections, like you said, at all sorts of agencies, at OSHA, at the Department of Labor. That's where we're at in the country right now.
I am happy to say that I am convinced that the job destruction in the next couple of decades is going to be massive. Like, honestly, one of the things that I struggle with, like getting out of the bed every morning, is that like my job is to help people destroy jobs. Like, how are billions of people going to replace the meaning they got from work with whatever they're going to fill their time with?
You said AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment to 10 to 20% in the next 1 to 5 years.
Yes, we're going to have a human-level performance on most, if not all, professional tasks. So white-collar work, where you're sitting down at a computer, either being, a lawyer or an accountant or a project manager or a marketing person. Most of those tasks will be fully automated by an AI within the next 12 to 18 months.
No matter how expensive these models might seem, they're still way cheaper than a human. So yeah, I don't see where this necessarily stops. As long as we have verifiable domains and solve problems, they're going to resolve those problems.
We did is we took out 90% of the use cases that humans used to have to do for customer service. I think young people coming out of university today is like 9% unemployment. I think it could easily go into the mid-30s in the next couple of years.
Signature of this technology is it's going to take us to a world where we have very high GDP growth and potentially also very high unemployment and inequality.
There is a real possibility that AI will displace human labor at a very large scale. If that happens, supporting those displaced will be a moral imperative of historic proportions.
Welcome back, Solidarity Report listeners. My name is Joshua Town. I am a rank and file letter carrier paying dues to the National Association of Letter Carriers Branch 55 out of Pawtucket, Rhode Island. My co-host today is Matty Bocage. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Josh. It's me, Matty B. I am also a rank and file, a city letter carrier, paying dues to the NALC out of Branch 12 in Worcester, Massachusetts. And today we have a very special guest, Michael Sainato. Michael, could you tell us a little about yourself, please?
Thanks for having me on, Matthew and Joshua. I'm a labor reporter at The Guardian. I've written there since 2018, and I am based out of New York.
And just a disclaimer, the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the individual participants and do not reflect the views of the NALC, the United States Postal Service, or any other organizations mentioned in this recording. Anything shared here should not be considered representative of any entity other than the Solidarity Report.
Well, Mike, how did you get interested in labor as a reporter?
So I'm from Albany, New York. It has one of the highest concentrations of union representation in the U.S. My father's from Italy. He came as an immigrant. So, the disparity of inequality, the expectations of, doing better, than your parents was kind of instilled in me from a very beginning. And one of the first labor stories I covered in early 2018 was the Disney workers fighting for $15 an hour, and no one was covering it. There was a little coverage out in California, but I was living in Florida at the time. No one was covering it. Bernie Sanders was like posting about it, but really he was probably the only popular public figure who was drawing attention to it. So it just kind of snowballed from there. It's like there's so many labor issues and issues about workers that don't get any attention, or at least enough attention, or good reporting. There's very few labor reporters out there, and it seems like media is every year is just contracting and getting smaller and smaller. And the media that does exist, it's being run by billionaires or propaganda arms that really aren't interested in talking to working people, or covering issues that are important to the working class. So I think it was like an easy kind of feel of I consider myself growing up part of the working class, and it's very meaningful work. It's difficult, it's frustrating, it's a lot of anger involved, but I love it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where this whole solidarity report started. People who listen in are going to know the story. I started this on me and another person that really helps out and behind the scenes. His name's Ryan. We started out on a lockout line in Providence, Rhode Island, and we did it for a strictly letter carrier podcast, and just trying to broaden the minds of letter carriers and realize that we're not the only ones that are getting, screwed over. We're not the only craft being hurt. And from there, we just kind of opened doors between our connections within the NALC. And we started to grow our fingers and start talking to different people and bringing people aboard. And when John opened up the door, which is another person who really helps out, John Murphy, he's a very influential letter carrier, rank and file letter carrier. He opened the door and we talked to McKenna Shula, who's a labor reporter down in Florida, and all the craziness that's going down there with the legislation. We like, well, let's reach out to someone who's like also doing this and doing it as broad as you are too. So it was Maddie who decided to reach out, and we're glad to have you on.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here, and yeah,
Well,
I've loved talking about this, and relish any opportunities to do so. So,
well, one thing I found fascinating. So, like, the genesis of this interview was a report that you, which I will pull up in a second, did about nurses in New York that being replaced by AI. But in that research, I found that a lot of reporters are, and I'm sure you can attest to this, kind of being blackballed if they don't go along with who they're reporting on. Let's say this one reporter, she was trying to reach out to OpenAI and get commentary from them, and they were basically dangling a carrot in front of her, saying like, "Yeah, we'll talk to you, but say what we want to say." Like, do you encounter that a lot in the labor field?
yeah, absolutely. Because companies, they won't answer questions that they don't want to answer. They won't put themselves in a position. They won't put public figures up for interviews if you are someone who's going to be adversarial or ask a question that they don't want answered, or especially with like emerging industries like AI. They're all about public image, like what's going on that video of hyping things up, of predictions and promises and things like that. And our jobs as reporters is to kind of contextualize those claims, burst those bubbles, so to speak, and these companies don't want that. So yeah, it comes from it's either stonewalling, or I've gotten very aggressive, hateful comments. Lawn, I've gotten like 9-page responses to just a handful of questions. There's it varies, and it's gone into like harassment in a few examples, but yeah, it's not an easy thing to be a reporter, and to step up against, whether it's the White House in this administration or a multi-billion-dollar company like Amazon, for instance. They don't like critical press.
Yeah, it was funny because you were saying that, and now you kind of led me right into what I was about to ask. Do you think this real change in the media happened maybe during the first Trump administration, where he really combated the quote unquote fake news?
I think that kind of just further worsened the public distrust of media, and just deepen the divide. So just partisan divide. So you have people who will watch, news outlets that are just completely open about, this is what angle or what position. Like Fox News is just all about, Donald Trump now. And there was a time where, they really weren't, at least as far, they were more along the lines of being fair. One example is when Donald Trump mocked the reporter with the disability in 2015. Fox News did a story when that happened, and it was just like this happened. Trump denies it. Nothing. And a year later, before the election, Fox News ran a different story, claiming that what you saw didn't happen, and just basically adopting Trump's like ridiculous stance on it. So I think that really happened in the right wing media. Especially you've seen, obviously the media landscape has changed a lot since 2016, but you still have that concentration of just conservative right wing outlets, and you have the liberal outlets that are still just like focused on just partisanship, and not really going after hard news. And just the funding sources, just Facebook, Google, all these companies have been extracting revenue, basically stealing views and stealing content, and not doing anything to ensure that news publications and online websites can continue getting. That was a big thing with Facebook with video. They hyped video, they promoted video, and with news, there was a focus on everything needs to pivot to video, and that kind of didn't pan out. And I think now this still exists, but it was huge in 2016, and now like I never see it. So it's been difficult, and Trump has definitely made it worse to attack journalists. There have been journalists with who are immigrants have been detained under this administration. Just journalists are under attack. What we saw with New York Times this month, of several journalists being subpoenaed because they dared to report on Trump's gift plane from Qatar and the security issues with that. So it's been getting worse. It's not been getting better since Trump took office.
Yeah, that sounds crazy. It's almost like they tried to create a Mandela effect there with that that disabled reporter. Like, oh no, you're misremembering that.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
it's straight out of 1984. Reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. That was their final, most essential command. It's like we're living it in real time, which you laugh about it, but it's insane that this is actually happening right now in our country. This isn't a fiction. This isn't a story, a novel. Like, this is real life. Yeah. And really quick I want to pull up a video because you were mentioning Facebook and 2016, and I find this very relevant to this discussion. Really quick.
2018, Mark Zuckerberg was called in front of the United States Senate to testify about the Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal. After an investigation by the Office of the Attorney General, it was found that Facebook implemented misleading privacy agreements, allowing third parties like the political consulting firm Cambridge Analytica to obtain personal data from roughly 87 million Facebook users, including over half of district residents, and use that data to manipulate the 2016 election.
Yeah.
Shout out to Cole Hastings for that clip. Thank you.
Yeah, so this has been one of the recurring themes ever since the first Trump administration, is just the open. They don't keep it a secret anymore. They can buy the president. They can buy laws. They can buy free passes at anything. They can break any rules, do whatever they like, be free of regulation. All they have to do is cut a check, and this is where this ties into the AI. And I just want to pull up this really quickly. This is the article that made me reach out to you. Can you guys see that okay?
Yep, it's up
Okay,
there.
so
And it says the New York nurses replaced by AI. It should concern every patient who cares about quality of care. That's the headline for those who are listening on Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio. And be sure to tell a friend and click subscribe.
So could you tell us more about this story? You interviewed, was it Marilyn Schuler who you
Yeah,
interviewed?
so she worked at Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx for 39 years. And to give some context to the story, in January, this was one of several hospitals in New York City where nurses went out on strike. They were out on strike for several weeks. Collectively, it was one of the largest nurses strikes in New York City history. They ultimately won that strike. Mayor Mamdani went out on the picket line with Bernie Sanders and supported the nurses. But following that strike, Marilyn, told me once she returned to work in her department, she's a utilization review nurse. So they're not working directly with patients, but they're reviewing care between insurance companies and care, and making sure it matches up and it's relevant. So what's being charged and what's being done is everything's fine. And their working conditions just suddenly changed without explanation, and they asked for explanation. They weren't really given any. And they continued to kind of push for transparency without any answers. They filed a ULP with the NLRB over the issues, and then ultimately they received a 45-day layoff notice at the end of May that they were going to be laid off and basically replaced by AI. Without any sort of pilot program, without any sort of transparency. And she was explaining to me, like, she doesn't understand how they could do this because they often don't have enough information at hand to complete their review. So she gave me the example of their mental psych ward unit, where they often have to call and talk to staff and actually get information on what is going on to actually complete their review. And I reached out to the National Nurses United. The affiliate union represents the nurses at this hospital, and they said this, from what they can tell, this is the first case where members within the union, this is the largest nurses union in the country, have been laid off and replaced by AI. In this case, it was 12 nurses, but I think speaking to the union and speaking with the nurses involved in this, it's kind of the canary in the coal mine of, like, this is where it starts. This is what we're going to see. The union's been very upfront about how they feel about AI. They're not opposed to technology, but that it should be used a tool in conjunction with nurses. It should be implemented with them alongside as partners and not dictated to them. In this case, it was just an outright replacement. The nurses kind of viewed it as a union busting tactic, as retaliation towards daring to go out on strike. They did win AI protections in their contract. So I believe they're going to continue to through the process of the National Labor Relations Board to work to try to get these nurses reinstated. But given the NLRB is very underfunded, the budget's very, their staff has been cut under the Trump administration. So, it takes over a year for these cases for a worker to be reinstated. So, it's resolution's not going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately. But, this is just kind of what we've been hearing about how AI is going to replace workers. And rather than it happening all at once, I think we're going to see cases where employers use it as a way to you find cheaper labor, regardless of the quality in the work, whether that suffers or not. And as a tool to keep workers in check. In this case, a union that dared to go out on strike.
And more to that, you mentioned the National Labor Relations Board. You also had a very interesting article, which I will share right here, which for the listeners says, U.S. Labor Board more likely to dismiss worker and union charges under Trump analysis finds. So, and also in conjunction with that, another article that you wrote, the U.S. Supreme Court rules Trump can fire leaders of independent agencies. Now, this would also include the National Labor Relations Board, correct?
Yes. So Trump, as soon as he got into office, he fired Gwen Wilcox. She was a board member at the NLRB. She was the first Black woman to serve on the board, and it left the board without a quorum. So up until she was reinstated briefly, and then up until this past January, there was no quorum at the board. So they couldn't render decisions, and it kind of just continued building the backlog at the agency. And because of this, we're seeing ULP cases get dismissed at a higher level, in addition to guidance from the general counsel of the board, who is formerly a union avoidance law firm lawyer. She's representing companies like Amazon. So she's already coming from on the side of management. And she issued this guidance that just makes it more difficult to file ULP charges, and it makes it easier for them to get dismissed, just because of, they're not being filed correctly, or something's wrong with forms or something like that, which, shouldn't be the case. It should be, making sure that workers who are experiencing labor law violations get the justice they deserve under the, current system, which already has, been proven to be just ineffective, as we've seen with some high profile union organizing campaigns that have kind of been stalled, whether that's Amazon or Starbucks or, Trader Joe's, Chipotle, the kind of list goes on. And it's why, labor law reform among people, especially elected officials that are, sympathetic to the labor movement, have been supporting like the PRO Act.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on quite a few things there too. And if we rewind a minute, and you were talking about the cuts to the NLRB, that was one of the takeaways that we had in a previous episode with Eric Schultz, the president of the United Steelworkers Local 7-1, that are being locked out by the British Petroleum up in Whiting, Indiana. He was talking about the cuts to all these protections, the environmental protections. And you got to realize, it's not just the NLRB, it's like everything. We're starting to America is starting to run as a corporation, which is trying to run lean. And there's only so lean you can get till you start cutting the bone, and things aren't going to function properly. And it's gonna side on the air of corporations, and the only person and the only people that are going to get hurt are the workers.
Well, that's like kind of the point, Josh. They're politicizing and weaponizing government agencies. Now that Trump can fire anyone on these independent agencies, and they have the Senate and the House, they can implement anyone who's basically a sycophant, which will carry out their agenda, which really kind of it rigs it not in our favor and not in anyone's favor except for billionaires and corporations.
But
Amazon, SpaceX,
you're
but
talking about rigging stuff, right? And you go back to the 2020 election, and we're pushing the rigged election. How can you say you lost a rigged election when you have now the House, the Senate, the presidency, the White House, and now they've put how many people on the Supreme Court?
right. But Amazon, SpaceX, Starbucks, and Trader Joe's, as you mentioned, Michael, they're suing to dismantle the National Labor Relations Board, arguing that it's unconstitutional. So if everyone's being fired, all these agencies are being gutted, and anyone that they want can take in these spots, I just don't think that people realize that we're like one step away from losing all of our rights as workers. Our unions will be gone. We'll have no legal avenues to challenge our employers in any way. Like this is serious. This needs to be talked about more. I cannot believe that I'm finding your articles, but it's not everywhere. Why is this not everywhere?
I ask myself that every day. No, it's very frustrating and scary because it's just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. What this administration is trying to do. They've tried to revoke collective bargaining agreements. They're still fighting to do that for over 1 million federal workers, which would just decimate union density in this country and just undermine any gains that could possibly be made in the past few years. We're already, we're at 10%. It ticked up from 9.9%, but you have to continue organizing workers more and more just to keep it at that level because the workforce is growing. So it's very scary that they're doing that on top of they're looking to privatize these federal government agencies. Just today AFGE put out that they're going to run a pilot program of privatizing TSA agents, and they're already proposing to cut the workforce by 14%. And they want those workers to work for contractors, and where they're going to get paid less. The contractor is the one that's going to make out like a bandit and getting getting that big contract. And how they're going to do that is paying workers less money, less benefits. And what happens with their collective bargaining agreements then, they're not going to be in existence because it's going to be a completely different employer. And that's what they want to do for the private sector as well. Trump's friends are union busters, billionaire union busters, whether it's the Fertitta brothers who have been union busting in Nevada at casinos, fighting the Unite Here culinary union out there. Trump himself does not like unions, regardless of the dog and pony show that the Teamsters had out in the Republican convention in 2024. So they're not an administration that's pro-worker in any sense. The claims that they have just have been easily refuted, debunked, and have not panned out. This administration is very is an opponent to workers' rights, labor rights. They've been scaling back protections, like you said, at all sorts of agencies, at OSHA, at the Department of Labor. They're looking to not only, this week they're looking to prevent heat protections from getting passed. Not only do they don't want this basic protection that barely wouldn't cost employers anything. You just need to make sure you your employees have access to water and give them breaks and shade and rest and things like that, especially in high temperatures. World-class soccer players were getting water breaks just in there, during the games. Soccer has quarters now, which it should, because it is so unsafe. So, but why don't workers deserve those similar protections? It's just ridiculous. But that's where we're at in the country right now.
Well, that's it. You look at professional athletes, and people don't realize that they're workers. Most of American sports have player associations. Like, they're also laborers just like us. And now that athletics, even though it's like a form of entertainment, these guys are millionaires, blah 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 blah. They still, like, it's a 24-hour job for these guys to stay on top of their game and be professional. It's a full-time job now, even though the season, is so long. Even after that, they still need to keep in shape and be able to perform at a high level in order to be productive and get the numbers so they can get that next contract.
But Josh, they're millionaires. Remember, the difference between $1 million and $1 billion is about $1 billion. So
but that's my point.
They're closer to us than they are to them.
Oh,
which is your point. Which I just, to make that distinction, like Margos, one of our colleagues, so eloquently put, the difference between $1 million and $1 billion is about $1 billion. Just to put that into perspective, when people want to criticize these millionaire sports players, it's like, they're closer to us than they are to them.
Well, the other thing too, people don't think about the sports player, that they only have an average lifespan to make that money, where the owner doesn't just like leave. It just collects a paycheck constantly.
Mm-hmm.
There was something else that I wanted to speak on, and it was about the density going down, and if you look at like the productivity, it has increased 2.7 times. So it's 2.7 times faster since 1979, as well as the cost of living has increased about 4.6 times. So it feels like when you look at the worker pay, it has stagnated in some workforces, and even other workforces like the auto industry took pay cuts to try back in 2008 to try to save that auto industry. And then they got slapped with, they took the pay cut, and then all of a sudden they got bailed out. And UAW at the American Axle finally got a contract to kind of get them, they're going a little bit above where they were at in 2008. It's just amazing to see how productivity has risen and the profits have risen, but yet the pay hasn't risen to keep up with the cost of living. It's just, it's mind-boggling.
And that's where I really get incredibly skeptical about this AI dream that these tech CEOs are promising us, because they tell us, oh, it'll be a time of abundance, right? But we already live in a time of abundance. Like, corporations are filling landfills with clothes and furniture. Incalculable amounts of food gets thrown away every day. Thousands of houses are sitting empty because private equity hoards them, waiting to make a profit. Like, they would rather that nobody have anything if they can't profit off of it. So how would AI change any of that? If they're going to take away our jobs, what do they need us for? They're just magically going to give us stuff now? Like, come on.
What do you think, Mike? You think we're going to end up getting universal income?
I think it matters. It's something the labor movement has to kind of, and I think they're still finding their feet on. One of the graphics you just showed from the story I did on how it would look if union density in the U.S. tripled, which is still far behind many European countries. My father's from Italy. Union density there is, I think union coverage is above 90%, and it's, I think, like around 40%. I think I think what really needs to happen is kind of developing just legislation and just platforms that kind of seek to push back on one, these lofty claims and promises, and then two, guardrails so that workers aren't protected, because right now we saw it during COVID when there was mass furloughs and layoffs. Like, unemployment wasn't enough, it wasn't working, and people were suffering because of it, and caused a lot of pain and anguish, and economic turmoil, and you have these AI CEOs almost giddy about the fact that they think their technology is going to replace humans.
AI will probably, most likely, sort of lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies created.
When you put it in very specific situations, like if you tell the model it's going to be shut off, for example, it has extreme reactions. So it will, we've published research saying it could blackmail the engineer that's going to shut it off if given the opportunity to do so, etc.
Ready to kill someone, wasn't it? I'm not sure if it was Claude or someone else.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, will we still need humans?
Not for most things. We'll decide. We'll decide. Like baseball, we won't want to watch computers play baseball.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would,
This is a long hesitation.
You have an incredible amount of power at this moment in time. Why should we trust you?
You shouldn't.
And unions and union contracts are some guardrails towards that, but there needs to be more, and there needs to be stepping up to companies where AI is used to worsen working conditions, to surveil workers and punish workers, and things of that nature. As this technology is implemented, there needs to be pushback and guardrails, so the labor movement can kind of develop a solution and have a say in how this technology shapes our society. Because as workers, these whether it's service jobs or anything of the like, nothing gets done without us, and I don't think AI is going to change that. I think they're going to try in many cases, but I think in many ways, I don't think these AI CEOs know what they're doing or know what they're talking about.
They definitely don't. But more to the point though of unions. So your colleague Ariel Pardes, am I pronouncing that correctly? At The Guardian, she had an article today entitled "How AI May Drive Union-Resistant Tech Workers to the Bargaining Table." Tech workers are increasingly unionizing, trading Silicon Valley's myth of exceptionalism for collective bargaining to contest the corporate deployment of artificial intelligence. So we are seeing hopeful signs. Like, we are breaking through. I mean, with the hammer that has been going after organized labor the last few years, there's definitely been a lot of mobilization and organizations, definitely trending that way. So there are a lot of signs of hope.
Yeah, one of the best organizers is a bad boss in AI, and how it's implemented can oftentimes be a bad boss, especially in the tech industry where employers are too excited to implement it and use it as fast as possible without thinking about their own workers and the consequences of that.
Well, it's the common enemy, right? Like it's like straight out of a movie where if we're all being under attack by aliens, it doesn't matter if you're left or right. We're all going to band together for survival, and that's what we're seeing with AI. If this threat is real, that they're trying to replace us all, then they can't stop all of us. It's just not going to happen. Sorry,
Yeah.
Josh, you had something to say. Yeah.
No, yeah, for certain. I forgot where I was gonna go with that, but you're right. I mean, you go back to the what was it, the '90s with Terminator, and just kind of looking at what that's doing. But Terminator is not killing people. It's right now. It's killing our jobs. It's starting slow, like a parasite, and sucking jobs away from people. It's not that we don't have people that are willing to work. It's people aren't willing to not have a job that makes ends meet. You know, you're sitting there and you're like, how am I going to get by? That's a real question. And that being said, Mike, as a reporter, you got to be fearful that people can just type in a couple things and boom, make their own stuff. Now, you know, you see that with college students writing papers with AI. What does that look like within the reporting industry?
It's definitely a big concern. There is hype. I think it's going to affect us. I don't think it's going to get rid of us, because I cover stories that are news, so AI has no information to base that out of. And even if I'm covering a story that's been covered before, I'm doing it like the AI nurses story. It was reported out just based on the press release, but no one actually spoke with one of the nurses who were laid off. And I took the time and I reached out to the National Nurses United to get some more context as well. But AI can't do that. AI can't create information out of nowhere. And another issue is, they're basically stealing content, whether it's Chat GPT or Claude or they have agreements with some of the big media platforms, but essentially they're scraping the internet for data. There's been issues of plagiarism and content being stolen, so that's going to be a continuing issue. And now the AI companies are experiencing it because AI companies in China are stealing from them. So it's a mess, and I don't know where everything's going to land. But it's definitely just a big concern. But I think there's always going to be a big need, and hopefully support and funding for good journalism. But like we talked about earlier in the episode, that it's just been kind of getting worse in terms of just the concentration of media during this administration. Trump trying to give his billionaire donors control of CNN with this Paramount merger that's halted for now. And what happened at CBS with Barry Weiss, who was a failed op-ed columnist who just quit the New York Times, and that's why she's famous, has no qualifications. And the turmoil at CBS has just been a tabloid gossip source for ever since. So it's definitely, the landscape is bleak, but I don't think there's always going to be journalists.
For certain. So we going into our next segment, which is my favorite segment. It's the final takeaway segment. Matt, what is your final takeaway from this conversation?
Well, I think that we need to really start looking at billionaires differently. I think it's starting to happen, but these people used to be revered, right? They'd be on the cover of Forbes. They'd make documentaries about them, movies about them, TV shows about them. Heck, Robert Downey Jr. said he modeled Tony Stark Iron Man after Elon Musk, as this genius figure, right? But they're really just grifters. They're really just parasites. They don't actually do anything except steal the wealth of our labor, and they're very blatant about the fact that they're just buying our government now. Like, our elected officials are supposed to serve us, not the people that paid for their campaigns. Like, here they are, right, at Trump's inauguration. This tells you all you need to know. Nothing that this administration is going to do is going to benefit the three of us or anyone that we know. None of our family, none of our friends, none of our coworkers. Like, look at these donations. All right, these are the people behind AI. These are the donations of all of the tech CEOs, AI CEOs, and the picture before there's Bezos, Zuckerberg, all standing at the inauguration. I forget the Google, forget his name, the Google CEO there, and Elon Musk. They paid for this. They paid for these gigantic government subsidies. Like, people think of SpaceX and Blue Origin's Amazon, like they are so huge and so rich because of our taxpayer dollars. They are subsidized by us. There is no SpaceX, there is no Amazon without American taxpayer dollars. That's my takeaway. We need to get them out of government. We need to limit what they can spend on politicians.
All right, Mike, what is your takeaway from this conversation?
Just to kind of piggyback on what Matthew was saying, I think that's correct. Trump keeps saying this is the golden age for America. I think it's the golden age for billionaires like Trump, like his donors. Like you said, Elon Musk gave him over $250 million to help him get elected and bought Twitter and turned it into whatever it is now, and constantly post on there like he has no life. He's supposed to be someone that is worth almost $1 trillion, but he's spending all his time posting white discrimination claims and just white supremacist nonsense. It's definitely bleak, but yeah, I think the awareness is kind of hopefully increasing that these people don't have the best interest of society at hand, and ceding that kind of power and the power of billions and billions of dollars that no one needs, no one could spend in a significant lifetime. And the fact that there's just so many big issues facing people in this country and in this world that could be at least alleviated with addressing that growing wealth inequality that's just been getting worse and worse, while union density has been getting worse and worse, worker productivity not keeping up with wages, and we're in a generation where our parents made more money than us. When taking into account inflation, they had better opportunities. College was more affordable. It was much easier to buy a house. So things aren't looking great for the typical American. But I'm still optimistic that conversations like these and organizing and mobilizing can kind of push the envelope and start we can start kind of addressing these issues and pushing back, and hopefully in the sometime near future take on wealth inequality and see that kind of reverse. But it's going to take a lot of work, and these billionaires are we see it in California now. They're kicking and screaming and spending more money to defeat a billionaire's tax than they would have to spend on the actual tax.
Yeah, that's definitely wild. And before I do my takeaway and I say what I need to say, if anyone wants to follow you, Michael, what's the best place to follow you? Where are your links? Where's your stuff at?
Blue Sky. So yeah, we shared. I'm on the Guardian, but I think Blue Sky for right now is the most. It's not the greatest platform, but it's like the most reliable. And you're not kidding. Like, I've left Twitter before a while ago. Facebook is a mess and just doesn't work, doesn't get engagements. But that's a platform I use on a regular basis for now. So that's where I post my work on a regular basis. I'm putting out at least 2 stories a week. Depending on the news cycle, could be even worse. And that's where what I'm doing is kind of available. So
Yeah, you're a monster. You put out a lot of stuff, man. You're always on the grind, and that's
Great work.
kudos to you. Yeah, it's not just like, you know, run of the mill stuff. Like, you get in depth, you get real in there, and I give you a
But
lot of credit for that.
thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, and I'm still like I'm covering a fraction of like the stories that like I could be covering, or like, you know, I could just be focusing on AI and labor, like, or I could just be focusing on the Trump administration. There's so many you know, fires to like to cover and kind of try to put out in terms of coverage that yeah. So and that's for like anyone that wants to get into journalism and get into writing, please, like, get into the labor space. Like, there's just do it, just try it. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, people want to read and hear about working class issues, about labor issues, and it's you know, it's not going to get attention by by news outlets that are run by billionaires who don't want to see you know, workers or talk to people who from the working class about their views and issues.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of why we started to branch out from the next generation carriers. It's a phenomenal postal focused podcast, and you know, we get rebroadcast there, and you know, we have a good following within the letter carrier community. We're trying to branch out and talk to, you know, reach other communities, because we're so siloed and focused in our own problems. But when you sit there and you talk to the person next to you, you realize there's common themes. We're all fighting the same fight, you know. And I think the big takeaway on this is you have to really look at who has your best interest. Is it the guy to the right? Is it the guy to the left of you? Is it the guy above you? Man, maybe we should reach down and put our hand down and pull the guy that might be slightly below us and pull him up, you know, and realize that everyone's fighting to have that job, to have that paycheck, to get those ends to meet. And if we look around and we really reach out to each other, we'll start to realize that together we are stronger.